Welcome to the Love Mondays podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome Vanessa Judelman to the podcast. Vanessa is a leadership expert, executive coach, keynote speaker, and founder of Mosaic People Development. For more than 20 years, she's helped leaders develop the confidence to build high-performing teams and achieve exceptional results. Today, we'll explore leadership, accountability, communication, high-performance teamwork, and what it takes to build a culture where people genuinely love Mondays and every other day. Vanessa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Amazing. Okay, so the big question, do you love Mondays?
Of course I do, Ron.
Okay, good. Tell me why.
Well, I love the work that I do. I started my business in 2011, and I created a business that leverages my strengths. I have the opportunity to see people grow and learn and develop and transform. And that gives me great personal satisfaction. I recently had a client who said to me, Vanessa, for 20 years, I just know I have no emotional intelligence. And it's really created a lot of issues in my life. And so my job was to help him develop his emotional intelligence. And so I just saw this person grow from someone who's really rough around the edges to really a very strong executive. And there's just so much personal pleasure in that.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that. And I often have a debate with friends around, do you do something that you love or do you follow your passion? And so what's your take on following your passion or doing what you love versus, hey, you got to pay bills and do something and find passion in what you do? What's your take on that debate, so to speak?
Well, it's interesting because I have a son in second year university and I have a son in grade 11. And so that's a question we debate about a lot in our house. And I have to say, you have to do work you enjoy. Does it have to be your top passion? I don't know. And I feel like people learn what they're passionate about over time. So when I'm talking to a 17 or 19-year-old, I say, just experience different things, like try
Yes.
different, even adults, Ron, to be honest. I'm coaching clients, they're transitioning into new jobs and new roles all the time. And one of the tools that I use is a personal profile, like a disc profile to pull out your strengths. So whether something's your passion or not, I do think people are lucky if they find a job which really is aligned with their passion. And I also believe that most people can find a job that aligns with their strengths.
Yeah, 100%. And I totally agree. I have a daughter in university and a son in grade 10. It's the same thing. And, often there's the reality of, look, when I graduated, I had big bills to pay and loans and things like that. I needed to find a job. Forget your passion and ikigai and all those type of things. But everyone's timing is different. But I think it is about coming back to that question, like, what work do you like and love? And honestly, like, I could feel it when you first said what you do. There's so much joy in what you're saying, right? And that's the spirit of what we're trying to do. Okay, so what advice would you give to people who maybe they don't love their Mondays, maybe they're not fulfilled right now? What are some steps they can take to start loving Mondays a little more?
Okay, so I'm going to say something that might not be very inspiring. Personal responsibility. Personal responsibility. To be honest, I believe that each person is the CEO of their own career. So you're in charge, you're in the driver's seat. So I always ask people, if you don't like your job, think about do some self-reflection. Think about what's not working for you. Well, I always like to start what is working. So what is working
Yes.
for you in your job? There's always something that's working. What's not working? And what can you do to overcome what's not working? And I think if you start with the foundation of those three questions, it's a great platform to then make decisions. Some people need to make a decision to stay where they're at. So I have a client who's in that position. He's 5 years from retirement. He's got some issues with his organization. He doesn't want to move. He's 60 years old. He's retiring in 5 years. He doesn't want to move. So for him, his personal responsibility is around changing his mindset so he can have the best version of that job for the next 5 years. It really is. Other people, they're earlier in their careers. And for them, I'd say, well, move. You don't like it? Move.
Yes. Yeah, no, I really like that, the personal responsibility. And I think it takes work, right? It takes intentional effort to self-reflect, which we often don't do in our society. And even just doing an energy audit to say, what are the things in my job? Even, maybe on a macro level, it doesn't give us a lot of joy, but there's things in there that probably do, whether it's working with teammates or certain parts of your role, and lean into those a little bit more. And I love how you talked about reframing, right? And one of the reframes I learned from a mentor of mine is, instead of saying, I have to do this, I get to, right? And it just reframes the whole situation. Okay, amazing. Tell me a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey, right? Like, I love the fact that you've been at it for a long time, and maybe some lessons learned along the way.
Yeah. So I've always been an entrepreneur, probably since I was in grade 5. And I've always been an educator as well. I mean, I think about the first time I was a peer tutor was literally in grade 5. My teacher said to me, "Can you teach these other kids how to do this?" And I think I just have this, we all have talents. Mine is like taking complex information and really synthesizing it. I'm a good communicator, I'm a good writer. So I've always leveraged those skills in my career. And I always had this vision when I worked in a consulting company for many, many years, for over a decade. I've worked in house. I've led teams. I've been a leader. I've had people on my teams who loved my leadership style. I've had people that reported to me who didn't like my leadership style. And to be honest, it was from those people, Ron, that I learned the most. Those people that challenged me to really change or adjust my style to meet their needs helped me develop
Yes.
and grow as a leader so much. So while I worked in corporate for 15 years, I always had the vision of running my own business, which I love. And it's not for everybody. I get people who call me all the time and say, Vanessa, I'm thinking of starting my own business. What do you think? I'll say, okay, here's what it takes. This. They're like, no, I think I'll just keep my job, which is great. It's not for
Yes.
everybody, but
Yes.
I'm a builder and I'm an innovator and I love a good challenge. And so for me, it works.
Yeah. So if you were to separate, for the people who it works versus not, what are the, key differentiators? Like, what are the 2 to 3 things you absolutely need as an entrepreneur?
You have to wear so many hats all the time. You have to be comfortable with risk and you have to be willing to change and change quickly.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, when I first started, I didn't know the first thing about sales, and I'm all of a sudden now trying to find business and source business, and now I actually love it. Like, but it took a lot of learning, and it took, me just resetting myself and being open to it and not putting myself in a box saying I'm a finance person. And it's just back to your point around the gentleman who now is more emotionally intelligent, is oftentimes we put these self-limiting beliefs in it. But the other thing I think you talked about earlier, the hustle that you need in a business is not for everybody, right? And it's really important.
Absolutely. And the way I think about sales, I've never considered it sales. To
Yes.
me, it's always, wow, I get to help you. So, like, tell me what your issue is. Here's how I can help you. And I think if you leverage that lens in whatever you do, if you're in an IT department, if you're in a finance department, I had an offsite, led an offsite with a client last week, and I had the head of HR say, I'm here to support you. So this is not about what I want to do. This is about how I'm going to support you. And I think whatever role you're in, if you can wear that hat, especially as a
Yes.
leader, right? I mean, some people say you're always in sales, everyone's in sales. I kind of say the opposite. My perspective is everybody's here to help and serve. And so how are you doing that?
Yeah, you made me think of a book that was transformative for me, which is called The Go Giver Sells More. And it's all about reframing sales to giving, right? Your help, and you use the word helping, but I think it's very similar. And I think, unfortunately, when you hear the term sales, you think of like a used car salesperson or something like that, where you think they're trying to sell something that's not needed. And I think it's back to what you're saying is, does the person need what we have, the skill set? If yes, let's enter into a partnership. And maybe that word is kind of a little misleading for people, as opposed to helping, which I absolutely love.
Yeah. And also understanding people's gaps. Like if you can really take the time to listen, like really listen to
Yes.
people and understand their gaps, then you can help them achieve what they need to achieve to be more successful.
Yeah, no, I like that. Such a thoughtful approach to, instead of, hey, here's what I'm trying to sell or whatever it is, it's like, let me listen and see if there's a fit. And that was the primary lesson in the Go for Giver book, which is just ask the person lots of questions, be curious, learn what their needs are, learn if there's a fit, and eventually transition to what you do as opposed to starting with what I do. So my very first few sales calls, I'll still call them sales calls. I just went, "Hey, Vanessa, here's what I do." Da, 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 da. I wouldn't even give you a chance to speak. And it was no wonder I got no business out of it. Right. And now I'm completely the opposite. It's back to the superpower of listening. Okay, amazing.
And
I
I
want to
think also, oh, just one quick
no,
point on that
yeah, I'd love
around
that.
like for anybody in their role, you need to build credibility and trust with
Yes.
whomever you're working with. And I think part of the way you build credibility and trust is also saying, "Oh, I can't help you with that. That's not my area of expertise at all. And I do have someone I can refer you to." Right? And
Yes.
if you're someone who's working in house as well, you know, I think there's nothing wrong with saying, that's not my area of expertise. And this is the person in the business who can support you. And I see this a lot with leaders, Ron, who move into the next level of leadership. So they get promoted and they're no
Yes.
longer responsible for doing a specific task. And so, but like I have a client who's a law firm, right? So somebody's in the marketing role in this law firm, and the lawyers come to her for all these things and have come to her for these specific tasks for 5 years. But now she's leading the team. She's really not responsible for those tasks anymore. And I'm encouraging her to say, absolutely, my team, not I'm going to help you, my team's going to help you. I'm going to
Yes.
get Michael, my colleague Michael, to come to the meeting with me so he can take that over. But you have to be willing to, I mean, some people might say no, but I like to use yes and. It's more of a
Yes.
yes and. Yes, of course, my team will help you, and it's just not going to be me anymore.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's much more engaging for your team members in that case who take on that responsibility, right? They say autonomy is one of the biggest motivators, so to speak. Okay, amazing. I want to transition to creating what I call a Love Mondays culture where people
Mhm.
are excited to come into work, deliver exceptional results, and are fulfilled. So I think you have a wonderful 4C framework you want to share with us.
For sure. So the first one really is identifying what is culture. So my definition of culture is how we do things around here. So you have to think really clearly. If you're a leader of a team, you set the culture, you create the tone. And when I work with leaders, I work with them to intentionally set a tone. So you come in every morning, every Monday morning to the office, you have to think about what's the tone I want to set, and it has to be authentic. Is it a tone where I'm focused on driving action results? Is it a tone where I'm driving innovation and collaboration? Is it a tone where we're really focusing on accuracy and customer service? Whatever it is, you as a leader need to consciously set the tone. And then your behavior matters. So if culture is how do we do things around here, whether you know it or not, if you're a leader, your team is looking at your behavior. So I'll give you an example of that, Ron. So I have a client who is 15 minutes early for everything. So last October, she flew me out to Banff to facilitate a retreat for her organization. And I had somebody say to me, Vanessa, we're starting at 9, but remember, this leader starts 15 minutes early. So 9 is actually 8:45. Ron, if I tell you, so I went in there 8 o'clock, got everything ready. I was bright and early. If I tell you, every single person was in that room ready to go at 8:45 when the agenda said 9. I have never seen anything like it.
Yes, yes. I love that example because I've got several examples which are the other way around. I still keep in
Yeah.
touch with this friend of mine. He was a wonderful executive, but he was literally almost an hour late to every meeting. And it became like the entire calendar for the entire team basically shifted. And it like, when you reflect on it, it was unintentionally disrespectful in that way. Right. Whereas this is kind of the opposite situation, but I totally agree with you. It's the role modeling, it's the behaviors we lead with that are important. And I like how you said it be very intentional because let's say it's a turnaround situation and you really have to get things done and stuff like that. I think it's leading with that intention as well. Right. And of course, you got to build trust, as you said before. But I absolutely love that to say, how do you build that culture intentionally? And so, how long does it take to get into a rhythm? Let's say it's a brand new leader coming in. How long does it take to establish that culture?
Well, you can set culture very quickly. very, very quickly, honestly, because it is not your intention that matters, it's your behavior. So if your behavior are high, if you're demonstrating high trust behaviors, you will set the tone quickly. And so high trust behaviors are things like, well, if you know the book The Speed of Trust by
Yep.
Stephen M. Covey, he talks about character and competence, right?
Yes.
And so it's demonstrating both. Like on the character side, am I respectful? Am I transparent? Am I loyal to my team? On the competence side, am I getting results? Am I getting better? Am I having crucial conversations with people? Am I clarifying my expectations and being accountable? And then there's three at the bottom, which is, am I listening? Am I extending trust to others? And am I keeping my commitments? And Ron, when you mentioned that colleague of yours who was an hour late, okay, you're automatically not keeping your commitments and you're automatically losing trust. So being late in my books is not okay. Canceling meetings all the time with your team, not okay. Because every time you don't keep your commitments, you lose trust.
Yeah, I love that. The other book that popped in my mind as we were talking is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, right? And then the question related to that is, okay, what let's say you're doing all the right things, you're leading with the behavior you want, you're role modeling, but you have a team member or some team members who are not walking the walk. What's your approach there?
Well, that's very common. It's very common because people are wired very differently. So, as a leader, you have to know yourself. You have to understand your work style. When I work with clients, I often use a DISC profile, for example, a self assessment tool. So, you understand your work style. The reality is, 75% of the population is different than you are. People have different wiring, different work style. So, when people aren't aligned, I always start with why. Like, let's peel away the onion. Let's look at what's the reason. Is it lack of clarity? Often, Ron, it's a lack of clarity around roles and responsibilities. Sometimes it's work style. It's just your approach as a leader. Maybe you're really detail oriented and analytical, and this person is much more high level and needs a lot more autonomy than you're giving them. Like, there's a lot of reasons. So you really have to slow down and pause and look at what's the reason that there's misalignment, and then you coach them through it, or maybe they need some training and development, or maybe it's a crucial conversation you need to have, or feedback. So, leadership is quite complex and there's no
Yes.
right or wrong, right? There's no recipe. And so it's really using a lot of good judgment.
Yeah, and as you said, it's very complex because that example I gave you where the person was an hour late, that leader genuinely cared about everybody. So I think everybody on the team really gave him a lot of leeway. And I still keep in touch with that leader. So it wasn't one of those situations where it was negative intent. It was just maybe there were some missing crucial conversations upwards that could have happened. Right. And as you reflect on it, so what can I do differently? Okay, amazing. Let's keep going with the 4C framework. What's next?
Okay. So the first thing is culture, create a culture intentionally. The second is clarity. You have to be really clear with your team, clarify your expectations. People think that, oh, wait, if I clarify my expectations with my team, am I being too bossy? Absolutely not. When you clarify your expectations, you're actually building trust. Here's what I need. Here's when I need it by. What help do you need from me? You know, I'm clarifying your vision. Here's the vision for my team. Here's the vision for the department. Clarifying goals. These are my goals. Here's how your goals trickle down. I mean, it is surprising how few leaders know, for example, how to set a goal and how to break down their goals. So that's, leadership, there's an art and a science to it, but you really need to be clear with your team.
Yeah, I love the whole vision. And, even back in my days when I worked for Kraft Foods, even sub departments of finance, we were required to develop a vision that laddered up to our
Right.
total vision. And to your point, it took work, but it added tons of clarity to the team. And we were all on the same page, so to speak, right? So it's an important thing. And then talk about goals for me. Is it a SMART framework you use, or tell me how goals are set correctly?
Um, different ways of setting goals. Yeah, for sure. The SMART one is probably the most popular, to be specific, measurable, achievable, results oriented, and time bound. So that's a great methodology. I just say to leaders, when you set a goal, again, be clear and be specific. And then the next step is break it down into steps. Like literally get out an Excel spreadsheet and say, okay, if this is my goal, what's step one? What's step two? What's step three? So for me, it's less important on how you articulate the goal, more important, break it down, because
Yes.
people get really paralyzed by and feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of their goals, and then don't they don't put time in their calendar to achieve their goals. They don't take the 5 minutes up front to break down their goals, and it just increases their level of stress. So you have to be strategic. That's your job as a leader, right? And when you think about what it means to be strategic, there's actually three components. There's strategic thinking. What are my goals? Identify the goal is. Strategic planning, break it down, and strategic implementation. And it is the third that I think most leaders and teams struggle with.
Yes, yes. And I love how you said, "Hey, let's break it down into the next task or the next part of the goal. And then back to the listening and communication. I think it flows nicely to have check-ins and say, are we on track? If not, how can I help? Back to the question you asked earlier. Amazing.
Kind
Amazing. Should we go to the next C? I love it. Coaching. Should we go to
Whoa,
that
oh, what
C?
a segue. What a segue, Ron, into coaching. It's perfect. So what is coaching? So let's define what coaching is. So coaching, there's two different kinds, formal coaching and informal coaching. So formal coaching are those meetings that you have where you have an agenda, you have them regularly, whether it's once a week or every 2 weeks. Sometimes leaders will say to me, Vanessa, what's the appropriate cadence for meetings? It depends. If you have someone on your team who's brand new, meet more often. If you have someone on your team who's fully developed and is traveling a lot, and maybe you meet every other week or once a month. It really depends on how new and how developed the individual is. So you have a formal meeting, you have an agenda. The agenda, and they need to be quick. People say to me, "Oh, Vanessa, I spend so much time, or I don't have time to coach." Coaching doesn't take a long time if you do it properly. So have an agenda, right? So your agenda could be, I like to do these formal coaching meetings at the beginning of the week. So your agenda could be, what are your goals for this week? What are you going to do to move them forward? Any challenges, and what help do you need from me? And then maybe another additional point would be, here's just some information I need to share with you. Quick, 20 minutes. So that's formal coaching. Then there's
Love it.
informal coaching, right? It's just day to day, like solving people's problems day to day, asking them powerful questions so they can start thinking for themselves. So coaching is such a critical way to build a high performing culture where people love Mondays, because your job as a leader is really to help people in your team to learn and grow. And when people are learning and growing and developing, they for sure are going to love Mondays.
I love it. And I do love the part it can be really quick. It doesn't have to be a long drawn out meeting. And look, I spent 20 years in corporate, and the way it works is if it's a 30-minute, you generally will go 30 if or longer. 60, you'll go longer. And what I picked up in what you're saying is, hey, just quick discussions, quick meetings. Let's keep it fluid. As opposed to it becoming a cumbersome process, it's an ongoing, enriching process for both sides.
My advice to most leaders is cut your meetings in half and make sure you have an agenda. I mean, Ron, how many people don't have agendas?
Yeah,
You know what my favorite expression is? No agenda, no attenda.
I like it. No attenda. I'm leaving. I like it.
Oh, yeah.
So on the coaching topic, what about the role of recognition, right? Because I came from a department, finance, most of my career, where if it wasn't broken, don't fix it. So tell me about the importance of recognition, when somebody's doing a great job, and maybe not necessarily just the big things, the little moments. How do you see recognition?
Yeah, I have a great tool for recognition, which I'll share with you. So, what's really interesting about recognition? A lot of leaders don't provide recognition because they don't need it themselves.
Yes.
Like, I don't need that positive reinforcement. I'm good. I'm saying, well, guess what? Your team is not you. 75% of the population is wired differently than you are. So just
Yes.
because you don't need it, it doesn't mean other people don't need it. And so the tool that I use for recognition, which is super practical, it's called DE. So you describe the behavior and then you explain the impact. So let's say somebody spent some extra time going through a document and found some errors, right? So you would describe the behavior. Thank you so much for spending the extra time to go through that document. You found those three errors. Okay, so that's just describing the behavior. Then you explain the impact. The impact is that the quality of the document was so much better, and we wowed our client with our level of customer service and quality. A lot of leaders forget the impact part. Just go, oh, thanks, like high five. That's great. It's great to be a
Yes.
cheerleader. And when you explain the impact, recognition is just, it takes it to the next level and it really reinforces the behavior you want to reinforce.
Yeah, I love that. And as an employee, I once had this situation where I was reporting to a CFO, and she actually worked. And and she was. I think her parents were farmers, so she worked from dawn to dusk. Just it was work. It was part of her DNA. And I had an HR person who were implementing a project, and she came to me and said, "Look, here's the way she's built. She had understood, and you're not going to get any recognition from her based on what I know." And it helped me understand my boss a little more, and it helped me not necessarily look for it because I was really frustrated. So there's going to be times where maybe you don't have a manager or a person with that type of approach. Sometimes it's even just understanding what you said. We're all different. We're all wired differently. But as a leader, I 100% love that approach, which was very authentic and thoughtful, which was, you went into the specifics rather than just a high five or good job. And which is better than nothing, in my opinion, but it's not as impactful.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it's,
amazing.
well, it's free too. Recognition, it's free. It's
It's
just
free.
such a great
Yeah.
tool.
In many of my workshops, I literally say, okay, who does not love recognition? I say, put up your hand. And nobody puts up their hand. We might like it differently, public, private, however we want it. And that's important. But that's a missed opportunity, as you said, and a lot of times.
You know
Okay,
what, Ron? That's
amazing.
a great
Yeah,
point.
please
Yeah.
tell
Can I
me.
say that one more
Of
comment
course,
on
of
that
course.
around public or private? That's a really important point. I always recommend people give it privately and ask permission if they want to share it publicly.
Love that.
Yeah. There's just one little piece there.
No, no,
Yeah.
I love the permission aspect, right? And leading with the private, and some people love the public recognition. So then, that even takes it to the next level. Okay, so last C on this 4C framework, communication. Let's get into it.
Okay. So up, down, and across the organization, we all need to work on our communication. So, leaders, if you want to create a high performing team, you have to dial up your communication. And part of that is being transparent. Part of that, because that's the way you're going to build trust. Part of that is knowing your audience. And so when you think about, we talked a little bit about disc profiles and the fact that people are wired differently. If you're working with someone who's really direct, be direct. Give them the bullet points. If you're working with someone who's much more expressive, give them an opportunity to express themselves. If you're working with someone who's much more analytical, give them a lot more detail. So, communication, you have to know your audience and be able to change or adjust your style to meet their needs.
I love that. And tell me the role of crucial or, tough conversations in a team.
Mm. Well, if you don't have tough conversations, you automatically lose trust. So, it's funny. If you think about situations, like I remember years ago, I was on a team and there was this person on the team that was really performing. Her performance was not up to par. Let's just say I'm being polite here.
Kind.
Trying to be polite. Her performance was not up to par. And the problem is our leader didn't deal with it. And so what happened is we started losing trust with our leader. why? And you know what happens? People start gossiping, like,
Yes.
why isn't she dealing with it? And so you have to, as a leader, deal with negative feedback. And yes, it does take courage. And there's also a way that you can do it effectively. But you must have crucial conversations, because when you avoid them, you actually lose trust. And most leaders lose sleep over it, right?
Yes.
The more you avoid it, the more you lose sleep. I remember years ago, in the last organization I worked in, I had a conflict with a colleague just before the Christmas holidays. Literally, it was, and Ron, I don't even remember what the conflict was, but I remember I could have talked to her and worked through the conflict and given her feedback before the holidays, but I avoided it. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. Whatever the reason was, that people tend to avoid feedback. So guess what happened? I ruminated over that conflict the entire vacation, and it literally ruined my vacation.
Wow.
So you can't ruminate over these issues. You have to really dial up your courage. And I have a model. I'm happy to share it if it's helpful.
Yeah,
Like
please.
sure. Okay. So the model that we used for positive feedback was DE. Describe the behavior, explain the impact. Constructive feedback builds on that. So DE, describe the behavior, explain the impact, specify the change, and then clarify the positive outcome. So it's actually the desk model.
Mm,
So when you describe the behavior, you have to do it without judgment. So let's
yes.
say, okay, let's use the example. Let's say you have someone on your team called Fred, and you run team meetings and they start Tuesday at 9, and Fred's starting to come later and later to the meetings, and you're wondering what Fred's issue is. And you're thinking, man, Fred used to come on time to my meetings, and I'm noticing he's really disengaged lately. I don't like this behavior. Okay, that's a lot of stuff in that statement
Yes.
and a
Yes.
lot of judgment. You have to peel away the onion at the behavior. So, what's the behavior? It's when you're late, right? So, that's a feedback when you're late. You explain the impact of them being late. Specify the change. I need you to be on time. Clarify the positive outcome. That way, we're all on the same page at the same time, whatever it is. So,
Love it.
you have to practice giving constructive feedback. You have to think about it in advance. Like, there's no wing in it. You can't wing it. You have to
Yes.
be intentional, plan, and practice.
Yeah, and look, I early in my career I avoided these conversations. Later in my career, I actually became pretty good at it and doing it in a very thoughtful way. And I think the way you did it was very thoughtful. It was team based. It wasn't personal. No judgment. Separate the issue from the people. All those rules come into play, and it's just like any other skill you can practice. And I actually believe you can build trust even in a crucial conversation, because you're doing it in a way that's forward looking and saying, how can we help each other going forward? And I think that's the model that you shared.
Yes. And you can also position it in a growth mindset way.
Yes.
So you can position it around, the purpose. Some people even, like, I'll coach them to call it out. So, the purpose, the reason I'm giving you this feedback is I think it's really going to help you learn. I noticed in a couple of meetings that you didn't listen to the client, but shared our solution before asking them 4 key questions about what their
Yes.
key needs are, for example, right? And so if you can pause or ask them questions first, right, then share how we can help, it's just going to make the interaction better. So if you can position it as the feedback is to help you learn and grow, I think people are also more apt to listen and welcome the feedback more.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for the 4C framework. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with my listeners?
Oh my gosh, there's so much more, Ron. We could talk for hours. Yeah, I just think, you are the CEO of your own career. So, really be thoughtful about it. Make decisions that impact your life and your career. And, Mondays come around every week. So if you're not loving your Mondays, it's probably time to take stock and really think about what is the reason for that and what can you do to make some changes.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you used the words personal responsibility earlier, which I absolutely love. So Vanessa, thank you so much. I really appreciate the thoughtful approach, and I appreciate the real actionable suggestions you gave, the models you shared. Where can people find you?
My company is called Mosaic People Development. So I'm at mosaicpd.com. You can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn and you can find me on Instagram. I post weekly videos on Instagram as well under Vanessa Judelman.
Amazing. Vanessa, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ron.